I'm going to regret this.
Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Happy spooky season, fellow fans of the Star Wars galaxy far, far away. This is indeed Aggressive Negotiations, and I am one of your humble hosts, John Mills, and joining me once again for another go-round in this spiral-armed galaxy of madness is Jedi Master Matthew Rushing. Matt, are you ready to talk some spooky topics today?
I am, John. I mean, tis the season, so they say, and something wicked this way comes.
Something wicked this way comes, and we always have to wonder, did Star Wars have the equivalent of pumpkin spice somewhere going, like,
Oh, jeez.
was Kessel? Wait a minute. All right, hold on. Let's rewrite our canon here. We know the spice mines of Kessel are there, right? Sure. So it's a drug.
Yeah.
Did they have pumpkin spice come out of Kessel as well?
I mean,
Like we can tell from the way that many people react, it's highly addictive. So
Yep.
is this a possibility?
I absolutely do think that they had pumpkin spice. Of course, it had zero pumpkin in it. Although
Yes.
these days, Starbucks is telling us that they now have the real pumpkin spice latte. So what did that make the previous pumpkin spice latte?
A Sith imitation is what it made that. And they also have now a pumpkin protein cold foam. So I think we're just throwing words in a blender and hoping for the best.
Oh,
and
thank
we're
God
just
for
getting
AI.
things. You know, you know what? Oh, no. Oh, the products we're about to experience are going to be, this is going to be a nightmare, isn't it? Oh, no. Oh, geez.
John, let's move on to something else. Quick.
Yeah, we're going to move on. We're going to move on. But remember, don't move on from giving us a star rating and review over on Apple Podcasts. We would highly, highly appreciate it. It's so scary out there in the realm of podcasting when people don't give you ratings and reviews. We appreciate everybody who's listening. We know who you, well, we don't know who you are. That's too creepy, but we know you're there. So thanks for listening. But if you haven't had a chance, go on over and give us a star rating and review. But the real reason that we are here is to discuss the possibilities of spooky season in that Star Wars galaxy
Welcome
far,
to
far away.
Spooky Town.
I love this. I'm going to take that and I'm going to put that into AI and I'm going to see what we can do with that.
Oh, no, please don't.
Well, hey, once I do, I can't copyright it. So what the heck?
this is
We'll just
true.
put it out there
This
for the
is true.
world. And if we get it to work, we'll attach it to the show notes, which means it's not going to happen. So there you go. Anyway, so we've talked about these things before, Matt, in our many episodes about the difficulty of time zones in a galaxy far, far away and seasons and coordinating things and all of this different type of stuff. But given that the galaxy far, far away is established, like here, there's a question. Are ghosts real? Are they not? Ghost Adventure's been on the air for 30 seasons. So maybe they're real. I don't know. Maybe they're making it up. Probably. But we know they're real in the Star Wars galaxy far, far away. So basically, I just want to ask you, what's the shape of the spooky stories in that galaxy far, far away? Do you think that there was a really rich tradition galaxy-wide for ghost stories, given that Force ghosts at a minimum exist? Or do you think that there was still tremendous skepticism about it?
See, when I was thinking about this question, when you had brought it up, the first thing that it popped into my mind wasn't really the fact that, Force ghosts exist, because I feel like that would be something that very few people would know about. Now, whether or not there were stories, could totally see there just being stories. But the thing that I was thinking of more so was the Dathomiri witches, right? And the kind of like ghost-like nature that they have. And that seemed to be a thing to me where, the idea of witches and then, of course, their spectral beings that they can have, they can cause themselves to be kind of invisible. We saw that with Madame Talzin in that episode where they go to kill Dooku. And so I feel like they themselves are actually rife for storytelling across the galaxy as, galactic boogie people. I mean, they just seem like super creepy.
So you're saying that like there wouldn't have necessarily been ghosts, but when the galaxy was more riddled with Force users like the Night Sisters, they would have been pulling tricks in such a way that would have convinced people they were ghosts when it was really like, a Night Sister had gone invisible to do an assassination or something like that. So they wouldn't have been encountering ghosts so much as people who could use the Force to mask their presence and those sorts of things. But given the galactic scale of everything, at what point do you think this would have gone? Because the galaxy, when we encounter it, even at the time of the Jedi, as we get a little more shading in the Clone Wars, even while the Jedi are active, a growing cynicism, the Han Solo perspective of the galaxy, the cynics have taken root. So do you think that time period in specific would have been less apt to believe in anything like that? Like, did we encounter the Star Wars galaxy in that age of cynicism where everybody would have simply assumed that it was simply a parlor trick or something like that? They wouldn't have been inclined toward the supernatural. Or do you think it's like a case-by-case, planet-by-planet basis?
I think it's a case-by-case or planet-by-planet thought process. And I think I was thinking of the Mon Cal, right? And the Quarren. And that planet has a long history with Jedi intervention, with Jedi friendship. And so that might be a planet where the idea of, a dark Jedi or something of that nature would have taken root. I mean, but you think of a planet like, obviously Tatooine. That seems like a place where all of those stories just seem so remote. And then at that point, people get called wizards or witches or, those type of things because that's the place that a person's mind kind of goes to. They just put it in this other kind of magic category. And it makes me think, that, they called, Ben this crazy old wizard, and he knows who he is. Uncle Owen knows who he is and he knows what he's capable of. But there is that language for them to be able to have these discussions that make sense to Luke as a character. So there has to be some sort of mythology or fairy tale nature to the Star Wars galaxy that allows people to have these type of conversations and tell these type of stories. And so that's what makes sense to me as poor, ghost stories have to be a thing. Scary stories have to be a thing in the Star Wars galaxy because there's plenty of scary things that happen. Not only that, but I mean, when you think of living in a galaxy where, you are coming in contact with all of these other species, right? Well, to your species, another species could look terrifying as well. Right. And so, you think of that process and that idea. It's like, man, there has to be ghost stories all over the place. And then, each planet would kind of probably have their own type of ghost stories based off of, the species in the end that kind of terrifies them the most, on top of all the supernatural stuff that you might hear in the story,
Yeah, I do. I think that's true though. Cause like, especially you ride the hyperspace lanes, you wind up, you know what? I would actually, the now overlooked and forgotten unfairly Skeleton Crew. How easy would it have been for a kid to have gone to a planet and then seen something, which, in Skeleton Crew, it's a wonderful gag where they encounter like this big, horrific Cthulhu-like creature. And he's just like a dude in a spa. And he's like actually pretty cool. But the kid sees at first, gets scared, runs off, all of a sudden becomes a monster story. Oh, don't go to that planet because there are monsters there. And I encountered a strange spirit, or there's somebody who can use the Force that is not trained. I like where you're going with that. Like, it's inevitable that Star Wars would have been rife with those sorts of stories all throughout the galaxy. So the question becomes for me from there, because I agree with you, why haven't they embraced that sort of thing in the publishing world? They're really trying hard to force more Jedi stories and more, timeline stories and stuff like that. Why wouldn't they embrace this idea of like an anthology of spooky stories, like ghost stories from a galaxy far, far away, where they tell the story from the point of view of somebody who's there? And maybe they're, the trick to the story is like the audience, we're in the know, right? It's that ultimate dramatic irony. Oh no, I know that was just a night sister, but that person doesn't, so I understand how the story came to be. You know what I'm saying? Like, isn't there a possibility there for that?
You asked that question because there are stories in the Legends or expanded universe or the books or whatever. In fact, this one recently came out a few years back, which was Dark Legends by George Mann, and he had his Myths and Fables book as well that came out. So it was like the kinder version of that, and then they had this scary story series that they did with Dark Legends. You also had Dark Troopers that came out, so you had the zombie trooper type of
right.
thing.
Now I'm reading Red Harvest right now as we record this.
Yeah. Yep. So, and I mean, you even think of the Clone Wars, right? You had the Legacy of Terror episode where you have the brain worms, and so. Right? Like those are actually things that happened in the galaxy that are terrifying and scary. And so when we're talking about this idea of the fact that scary stories, would they exist? Not only would they exist, but I think there are so many places for those to have become a thing.
Right.
Because there are so many scary things that actually have happened in the Star Wars universe, and just creepy things. Again, like gosh, that brainworm thing is just kind of terrifying.
Fun
right?
story. As everybody knows, who's been listening for a while, and you definitely know, my youngest, we watched Clone Wars all the way through together, but the brainworms arc is the one she still won't go near. Like it terrifies her too much. She would I pitched it to her a couple of times. I was like, this is still an arc that we didn't do. And like I explained the arc to her and she's like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. But that's what I'm saying is like every Halloween, we should get like a Star Wars Halloween special, right? Like, yes, I know. Memories of the holiday special set aside. Happy Life Day, everyone. But like, a Star Wars Halloween special could become such a fun annual tradition where it's like, it's that whole thing.
So it's a Tales of Terror series.
And you have a Crypt Keeper like guy, like Tales from the Crypt had, and you make it just this fun annual holiday tradition of, you got the streamer for Pete's sake, just make one a year. Like the Simpsons still do the Treehouse of Horror all these years later. They suck now, but like Star Wars, I think could keep that going for quite some time. And like you're saying, we've already got brainworms, we've got zombies, we've got those sorts of things. Like, I want to see them embrace it. I want to see them hold it and like make it a part of the identity of this. They're always looking for other genres to get into. Let's get into horror, man. Let's have fun with it.
Well, and I mean, you also think of that idea, right? The Clone Wars also did the Zillow Beast.
Right. We've got a monster movie.
In that, there's a monster movie. You had Rebels doing that Out of Darkness episode.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Clone Wars did something like Lair of Grievous. So
that
there
was a
are
great
all
one.
of these places in which I think they have played with the horror aspect. And again, this is one of those things that I think we've talked about so many times, right? Is that the Clone Wars really set the standard for how Star Wars can do these genre storytelling structures. And if you do it right, you get a, scary movie, horror type vibe, but in a way that feels completely Star Wars. I mean, gosh, you even think about the original Star Wars. That whole scene in the trash compactor is kind of terrifying the first time you're watching it when Luke disappears because some weird thing has pulled it under and you barely even know what it looks like. And your imagination is kind of running wild with you, like thinking about what could be happening to Luke at this moment.
That's true.
You know, you got the Sarlacc pit in Return of the Jedi, you know, and Boba Fett falls down there. Can you imagine the ghost stories that were told about that character before he actually returned? You know,
that's true.
So I think this is the type of thing where, you know, it makes sense that Star Wars, like our universe, there is this idea for so many people in the Star Wars universe that there is a supernatural realm, that there is something beyond the material that influences the material, right? And then you have the existence of Dathomiri witches and all of these crazy peoples and creatures from all over the galaxy, like Wampas, and, you know, the list is endless. And so it makes sense then why, I mean, gosh, episode 1, we travel through the core, and how many creepy, crazy beasts are there in the Naboo core that are just terrifying creatures of you know, the sea. And so, I mean, I like your idea though that you could utilize this as a fun storytelling thing. You know, I know they've done a comic series, and it was like I think it was like Tales from Vader's Castle or something.
Yeah.
And it basically was that idea of like a horror type, you know, comic series. You know, we're just kind of telling over the top scary stories. But yeah, I mean, this is something I think you could lean into, and it could be a really fun thing, because I think Star Wars itself leans into that. And how easy is it to have a Star Wars boogeyman,
right?
In the Star Wars galaxy, when you literally have characters like Darth Vader, and that's exactly what he was, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're in agreement. Let's see them embrace it more. Let's have more fun with it. Grateful for what we've got and stuff like that. But like, there's definitely a flavor for it. There's definitely possibilities for it. So on a final note, what I want to do is I want to get your pitch. What type of scary 30-minute or 22-minute, however long the actual episodes are now, before and after credits, whatever, but half-hour format. And you're doing the first Star Wars Galaxy of Terror special. What is the story arc that you're throwing out there? What would you want to see as a Star Wars horror movie?
Okay, so this might sound very strange, but it's actually just the first thing that came to mind. Jedi younglings that are on a quest to find their lightsaber crystals, but everything on Ilum goes wrong.
Ooh.
So it's kind of more, a little bit more family friendly kind of story, but it's like that type of spooky story that you feel like Jedi children at the temple might tell each other to scare them about what's going to happen at Ilum, you know. And we already know that it is a scary adventure, right? Because there are all of these things that can go wrong. We've seen that in the Clone Wars, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you have to imagine that there are older Padawans that are making up stories for the younger Padawans about what it's really like in quotes, you know? I think that would be fun.
That would be a lot of fun. I like that framing device very much. I know that there's a sizable crowd that's like, oh, well, let's move away from the Jedi, but I love your story. I would want to see them do a slasher movie in 30 minutes where you have two possibilities here. The one is if you really want to embrace it and have fun with it and lean into his true supervillain horror vibe that we got in the murder hallway in Rogue One, have a slasher movie, only it's Vader going after a specific set of people because he's the ultimate, like he's Jason Voorhees, he's Michael Myers, he's Freddy Krueger. No matter what you throw at him, he survives. So
I was just going to say, didn't he already do that in episode 3 when he went into the temple and killed younglings?
No, but I'm talking about the smaller scale, like he's just showing up, taking people out, and then you have the final girl, and the final girl gets through.
Kind of like that. That Obi-Wan episode, right?
Right.
Where he's in that town and he just like snapping necks and stuff all over the place.
That's exactly the vibe, but like Halloween or Friday the 13th, where it's like nobody's quite sure who's after them, but it's him, and we know it's him. And then at the end, we have a final fight. The person gets away, but then Vader's gone, sort of thing. But then I would say, okay, if you don't want to do a Force version of that, then make it, let's say, a super battle droid that gets reactivated unwittingly as people are out on a camping trip on some planet.
One of those commando
That's
droids
even better.
that were so creepy,
That's
dude.
even better.
Because they do all the weird movements where they like kind of flip backwards and they're so out of joint and everything.
And the person like scores a hit and then the head turns around and he kills him anyway. And then again, you can have the final girl and she gets away at the end, but the commando droid's disappeared. And it's like, I was sure I cut his head off or something like that. And the thing's like soldered its head back on and boom, there you go. Part 2 could be coming soon. I love the fact that you took a commando droid. That is even better than super battle droid because they're markedly more intelligent. I like that. I like that a lot. But
that I think this whole thing, like, look, what this is in some ways is, and you mentioned it earlier, right? You have the Tales of books that we got, for bounty hunters and those kind of things, and I love the idea that this is the Tales of Terror. Series that happens every year, and they're just little 5-minute, maybe 7-minute shorts that could tie in. But yeah, I mean, hey, I guess Disney, we're doing your job for you. So
how many weeks in a row is this? 412 that we've been doing these free ideas for them. I like. Listen. Considering his track record, especially after hearing about the hunt for Ben Solo, maybe Mr. Iger, give us a call. We can help out here. Anyway, I think what's an even better idea is for people to find you on the internet and stalk you, Freddy Krueger style, with their ideas for Star Wars Tales of Terror. Where can they find you out there?
That's terrifying. But you can find me all over social media under the name Matt Rushing02. Of course, here on the network, you'll find me doing a completed show called Owl Post about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series, one chapter at a time. I'm over on the TFM network. I've got a few shows over there. The main one is the 602 Club, where we're talking about all of those franchises we love outside of Star Trek. So John's a frequent guest over there. We talk Star Wars, plus all of the other things that we just love in the geeky universes. Plus, a lot of great Star Trek talk over there with Chris Jones. We're talking, Enterprise, Deep Space Nine, Strange New Worlds, Picard, Voyager. I mean, you name it, we're talking it. So check all that out. But John, maybe people have some spooky ideas for you for your next, I don't know, maybe you could do a haunted house. Where could people find you?
A haunted Star Wars house would be great, but it's more effort than I'm willing to make. So somebody else take that idea up, please. But if you want to tell me what your ideas are, I'm over at Kessel Junkie out there in the wilds of the internet. Have fun. I'm very much more active on Letterboxd than any other social media network. And you can find me here on the network co-hosting a show called House Lights with Darren Moser and Tristan Riddell, where we talk about movies done by different directors. As we record this, we have just recorded a 250th episode where we discussed the 10 Commandments by Cecil B. DeMille, the 1950s one. And that was a fun conversation. And so, we've probably talked about one of your favorite directors. Give us a listen. But Matt, I'll tell you what, I'm starting to get a little creeped out right now. I think that I heard something snap in the corner over there. I think it's time to go back to the Jedi Temple and lock ourselves in our chambers. And so I think it's time to close these negotiations.
John, as an Egyptian pharaoh once said, so let it be written, so let it be done.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.